Welcome to this two-part video from the Carleton University Library on evaluating online information using the CRAP test. In part 1, we defined the elements of the CRAP test, and in part 2, we're using the CRAP test rubric to evaluate a website as a source of information for academic projects. Evaluating a website using the CRAP test can seem overwhelming. Each of the 5 criteria, currency, relevancy, authority, accuracy, and purpose, represent complex approaches to thinking about information and involve searching for details that may or may not be available on a website. The CRAP test rubric is a tool designed to organize this process and hopefully simplify it, at least a little bit. To get to the CRAP test rubric, we will start on the library homepage at library.carleton.ca. Underneath the Research Support column, we will click on the Guides link, and then on the link to Subject Guides. Using the alphabet at the top, we will click on E for Evaluating, and then we will go to the bottom of the page and click on the hyperlink, Evaluating Sources, Use the CRAP test. On this page, we will click on the link 2021 CRAP Test Rubric PDF. The rubric guides us through the process of applying the CRAP test by allowing us to score a website for each of the 5 criteria. As per the instructions, we can assign points for each criterion and use the final total score to decide if an online source passes or fails the CRAP test. If a website passes the test, then we can consider it as a source for our academic work. If a website fails the test, then we can decide not to use it for a class project or assignment. Let's use this rubric to evaluate a website as a possible source for a project on homelessness in Canada. We will evaluate the website Homeless Hub. Here is the completed rubric for this website. According to the instructions on the first page, points are assigned to each source using the 5 criteria. Then the total points are added up across all columns. A source passes the CRAP test if it has 10 to 15 out of 15 points, and fails the CRAP test if it has 0 to 9 out of 15 points. The information at the top of the rubric is important as it identifies not only the research topic, but also the types of sources that are allowed to be used for the assignment, the website URL, and the day of the evaluation. The date of the evaluation is critical as it helps identify new content. A website that is well maintained may post new content regularly. As we can see, the rubric has 6 columns. The first column of the rubric identifies the criteria and also includes strategies for finding the information needed to assess the source. Having a clear pathway simplifies the search for information. The next 4 columns identify information to look for when scoring a source. Note that this is a framework for the evaluation rather than a set of hard and fast rules. There may be times when it's necessary to make a judgment call on the overall importance of information that is missing or cannot be found. The final column is a space to take notes, that is, to track the search process and thinking about the source. For currency, the first criterion, the Homeless Hub website scores 3 points. The website received this score because information was found about the date of publication and/or recent postings, regular updates, and functional links. Our notes indicate that the date of copyright is 2021. This information is found in the bottom left-hand corner of the homepage. In addition, some posts have been made relatively recently. However, some information, for example, on the community profile for Ontario, is over 3 years old. It might be necessary to follow up to find out why this information is 3 years old. The site also scores 3 points for the next criterion, relevancy. This is because the information on the site is directly related to the research topic, homelessness in Canada. The target audience includes researchers interested in homelessness in Canada, and the types of sources align with the requirements for the assignment, reports from academic and non-academic research projects. This information is generally available on the homepage as well as on pages such as About Homelessness. The website scores 3 on authority. This is because the authors are identifiable along with some of their other works, their credentials are provided, and the partnering organization is reputable. Contact information is available, and the URL is safe, plus there's an updated About Us page. A lot of the information about authority is located on the About Us page. Here we discovered that the Homeless Hub is a web-based research library and information center, and it is stewarded by the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness. If we click on the link About the COH, or the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness, we discover that it's led by Stephen Gates. When we click on the link to his name, we discover that he is a well-respected Canadian academic who's been honored by the Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada and is a member of the Order of Canada. Back on the home page, if we scroll down the page, we see that the Homeless Hub and the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness are affiliated with York University. If we want to know more about the other members of the Homeless Hub team, we can click on the link Our Team on the About Us page. Here we see photographs, names, and titles of the various team members. And if we click on a team member link, we find more information about the individual, including their academic and research credentials. For the next criterion, accuracy, the website scores 2 points. While there is evidence that the information is original, that there are accurate facts and/or supporting data and/or evidence, that there are citations on some documents, and that links are provided, there is a lack of information about the editorial process used for either content added to the website or the research publication shared. However, the research publications in particular seem to disseminate original research. Some include citations, and links to other sources are provided, all of which allow us to verify some of the supporting sources. To determine accuracy, we can look at the pages in the top navigation. If we click, for example, on What is Homelessness, we can see that there are links to other sources. If we click on Doing Research, we can see that the topics align with best practices for doing research in Canada. If we click on Community Profiles, and again the page for Ontario, we can see that there are links to sources of information. These links take us to reputable sources such as Statistics Canada. If we click on some of the resources available under Solutions, there are links to other sources. And finally, the About Us page provides information on how to contact and work with the team. However, on none of these pages is there any information about the editorial process. To find documents with cited sources, we click on COH Publications on the About Us page. While the reports generally do not have cited sources, the research summaries do. We'll click on this link. Then we'll click on Research Brief number 2. If we go to the right-hand side of the page and click on Download the Brief, we can find the cited sources at the end of the document. To verify the editorial process for the website, one strategy is to reach out to the team through the Contact Us email. This strategy led to the following information being received by email from a Homeless Hub team member. The content on the topic solution pages of the Homeless Hub is drafted by current and former staff who do their best to vet the sources but cannot say for sure that they've all been peer-reviewed. The publications produced by the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness Press are subject to a blind peer review process. And finally, the community profiles are to be updated this fall. The update process was delayed in 2020. The assignment allows peer-reviewed as well as grey literature sources to be cited. The Canadian Observatory on Homelessness research briefs are peer-reviewed. As we can see from the Grey Literature Subject Guide on the library website, grey literature is defined as information produced on all levels of government, academics, business, and industry in electronic and print formats not controlled by commercial publishing. That is, where publishing is not the primary activity of the producing body. Some of the research documents from the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness could be considered as gray literature. An email to Nick Felvo, who's a research associate of the Homeless Hub and who has a blog on homelessness, led to this information about his editorial process. He circulates a draft version of his blog post to between 10 and 25 people across Canada, sometimes outside of Canada, for feedback. He then reviews the comments and suggested edits, which is an informal peer review, not a double-blind process. He then chooses the feedback to integrate into a given post and recognizes all contributors in the acknowledgments section of the post. Finally, the website also receives a score of 3 for purpose. The site purpose and target audience are clearly stated, and there's no advertising on the site. This level of transparency is helpful in assessing the bias of the information. Back on the About Us page, the purpose of the site is clearly stated. It's an online library to make homelessness resources available to a broad audience. And the purpose of the Canadian Observatory of Homelessness is to support a range of decision makers to improve their capacity to fight homelessness. Identifying purpose is not so much to ensure that there's no bias, but to help make bias visible. Adding up the points, the website scores 14 out of 15. As such, this website passes the CRAP test and can be used as a source of information for this academic project. To review, the CRAP test is a framework for evaluating online information. The criteria are designed to identify key aspects of information to decide if a website is an appropriate source for a given academic assignment. It can be difficult to evaluate online sources. Not every source provides all the details that might be needed to assess the currency, relevancy, authority, accuracy, and purpose of information. However, the fact that it's not always possible to answer CRAP test questions can be helpful in choosing sources. If information is missing, it might mean the source doesn't pass the CRAP test. This is the end of this video.